So the SQL Tuning Advisor, I'll quickly walk you through. And guys, this is an automated tool as mentioned earlier. So what you have to do is just run the tool, look at the recommendations, and let us generate some recommendations for our own SQL. But after that, I'll reveal a secret to all of you. All right. So SQL Tuning Advisor. I think we should have, yeah, automatic SQL Tuning Advisor, or SQL tuning in Oracle. So what it does is, guys, like these all stuff we have already spoken. When optimizer is running in normal terms, so where is our optimizer? This one. When optimizer is running inside the database, when you hit enter after running a query, optimizer needs to be very quick. Within fraction of seconds, it must give a execution plan. It cannot take its own time. So execution plan is generated within fraction of seconds. That's how fast the optimizer is. But the problem on a normal execution is, as I mentioned, can you see the stale or wrong statistics about a table, like exact number of records that are inside the table? That is, we are not having correct values. And because of those wrong stats, optimizer will always generate a wrong plan. So of course, one important point is to keep the statistics updated about the database, but the more important part is, can you run optimizer in a tune phase where every step that is done by the optimizer can be tuned and Oracle will give you recommendations? I repeat, when optimizer is running normally, it will quickly pick up data and generate a plan, but you can force optimizer to run in a tuning phase, and that's the exact phase where Oracle will audit each step inside the optimizer, and then it will give you more details about, like, okay, what all things are happening inside the optimizer, and based on that, Oracle will give you some recommendations to improve your SQL query. So what are the analyses that are performed when optimizer is running in the tuning mode? So when you force optimizer to run into tuning mode, there are there are more types of analysis that is done, but focus only on these three. One is statistical analysis. Oracle will look at what optimizer thinks the number of records are available in the table and how many records are actually available in the table. Sorry, guys. So I repeat, statistical analysis will try to compare, okay, optimizer is thinking that there are 10,000 records in the table, but on physical level inside the table, there are only 5,000 records. So this is the statistical data that will be analyzed by the automatic SQL Tuning Advisor. Then access path analysis, what index is being chosen by the SQL to access the data, or if your SQL is avoiding an index, even that one is taken into consideration. What is the SQL structure analysis? Sometimes when you write joins, Oracle is smart enough, it will rewrite the queries for you. So that way Oracle knows that, this query is more efficient, and then it will execute. So it will also analyze the structure of the query that is coming inside the database. So our job right now is to force optimizer to run in a tuning mode and give us some recommendations about the SQL query that we are running. All right, so guys, what I'll do is I'll quickly show you this activity. We'll run this SQL Tuning Advisor on one of the SQLs that I plan to run inside the database. So clear screen, and what we'll do, select star from test_1. I'm just thinking what to do. So on this table, let us run optimizer stats. Okay. First of all, I want a good query. So maybe select star from test underscore one, where value equal to, guys, look at the where clause. I'm using a column where no index has been defined. Val 2. Let's go with this one. All right. And I'm hitting enter. So at this stage, for the SQL tuning, guys, we need the SQL ID. So because this SQL has already ran inside the database, so we need to find out the SQL ID. There are a lot of ways, but for your practice and quick way, what you do is, I remember I posted an article on our own website that will give you the SQL ID of the SQL that you just ran. All right. There are other ways, guys, $SQL and other ways. Even when you look at these reports, okay, let me be precise. When you're going through the AWR report, if there is a problematic SQL, the AWR report will contain the SQL ID. So most of the times you run SQL Tuning Advisor by picking up the SQL IDs from the AWR report. But right now, as we don't have an AWR report, I ran a query and now I want to know the SQL ID of this exact query. So what you can do, SQL ID, I think this is the article. Yeah, finding SQL ID of the statement you just ran. So guys, use this article for your own session. Let's take some other user in some other session ran a different query. This will not give you correct output. So what you can do is, I'm just quickly copying this one to get the SQL ID. All right. So this is the exact SQL ID that we just ran. So this ID is attached to this SQL. All right. Now our job is to run the SQL tuning, our automated tool, on this SQL ID to get recommendations as to what new I can do inside the database to improve this SQL. So for this, what we have to do is, so create the tuning task. So copy this one, paste it into Notepad. I would choose a new Notepad. And guys, all this stuff is, you can do it in GUI mode when you're using Enterprise Manager. So what you have to do is simply, you see this one, dbms underscore SQL tune dot create tuning task. Replace the SQL ID. We have already got the SQL ID over here, right? So what you do is paste the SQL ID. Then scope, we have different types of scope, but we are saying like like we are using the comprehensive scope. And I would honestly suggest, and I'll be very open with you, I'm not sure the other types of scope, but the one that we use is the comprehensive one. The time limit is like amount of time. I'm saying like, okay, go for 60 seconds. Don't take more than 60 seconds to give me the recommendations. So I'm giving a time to the tuning advisor, and you can give the time limit also. All right. So copy this one. You can give any task name. I would actually delete this one. My tuning task. All right, give whatever the task name, description, tuning task for the statement. You give the SQL ID, or you can keep it as it is, and then that's it. Don't change anything else. Copy this one, run inside the database. All right, so we created a tuning task, but the thing is, like, we need to run the task now. The task is just created, so we need to execute the task in order to get the recommendations. So what we do is we execute the task and then we display the recommendations by Oracle. So the execution of the task is simple. You need to give the name of the task that you just created. Can you see task name? So we are using the same package, dbms SQL tune dot execute tuning task. Give the task name and give the exact task name, my tuning task. So this way what happens is dbms tune, that's the tuning advisor that will execute your task. Now that this task is completed, of course, you can always query the DBA advisor log in order to check the tuning status. Like, and then I would say my tuning task. Can you see? So the task name, we gave it as my tuning task, and the status is completed. Now the question is, I want to see what Oracle has to recommend on this SQL that I ran. Okay, this is important. On this SQL, because this is the SQL ID corresponding to this SQL that we ran, we want to know SQL Tuning Advisor, what recommendations it has. So what you can do is, again, in this one also, you need to give your tuning task or the task name. Copy this one, change the tuning task name. All right. And you can simply run this query. And this is where you are getting the information. Now, can you see in this case what it is saying? General information section, the tuning task name, what is the tuning task owner says, single SQL statement, the scope is comprehensive, time limits, as I mentioned, 60 seconds, completion status completed, start, and schema name says SQL ID, what is the SQL ID, and SQL text. Okay, this is where we got it wrong, guys. Can you see? This SQL ID has this text. This is the wrong SQL ID we have picked up. And I know the reason why we have got the wrong SQL ID. So I'll quickly get the correct SQL ID to run it for you guys. And if you see, if there is some wrong SQL text that is being run, it will clearly tell you the type of SQL statement is not supported. So what we have to do, I made a small mistake and I know I can locate it. So let me quickly locate it for you guys. Select star from test_1 where value is equal to val2. All right. And we made a mistake while selecting the SQL ID. So what we have to do is the set server output off. I'm not sure if I ran or not. This needs to be off in order to get the correct SQL ID. Okay, so is it selecting the same SQL ID? Yeah. Can you see? Looks like this is creating a trouble. So the problem is whenever you run an SQL, guys, if you see this one, this SQL ID is same as this one, 7mx, right? So the what I'll do is I'll use an alternative method, select SQL ID. So we'll describe the column, describe $SQL. So select SQL. We need the SQL ID from $SQL where SQL underscore text like, and I'm giving the exact text. Sorry guys, for most of you this might be completely new stuff, so I'm giving select star from, or why not give the entire statement. And just to keep it simple, I'll give it as %. Okay, so we see there are multiple SQL IDs. What we'll do is, rather than this, we will actually also query the SQL text to find the exact SQL ID, right? So this is the exact query, right? And this is the exact SQL that we need to get the tuning advice on. So what we do is, I can definitely edit this one, or what I'll do is I'll try to drop this tuning task, or I will just rename it as _1 because I want to make it a little quick. And then you my tuning task _1, that's, sorry, this one will be same, create tuning task, and I'm changing the task name, guys, and task name again _1 and _1. So this time what we are doing is we are asking Oracle, sorry guys if I have confused a lot of you, don't worry, like once you practice you will understand what I'm doing. And then we need to execute this tuning task. My goal is to quickly show you what recommendations Oracle gives, okay? And now we need to see the recommendations. Now this is the gold, okay? This is important, guys. This is what we were looking at. So the tuning advisor, it will give you the schema name, and this all general information we have already seen. Schema name is this, SQL ID is this one, SQL text, this is the SQL text. Now this is the finding section. That means SQL Tuning Advisor thinks that this is something you must do, but guys, again, it's up to you whether you want to take that advice or not. Because remember I said I'll reveal a very important detail and I'll talk about it in some time. Let us review the findings. So statistics finding, optimizer statistics for table sys.test1 are stale. That means inside the database, the table statistics for table 1 are very old. So what is the recommendation? Consider collecting optimizer statistics for this table, execute. It will actually give you the exact command that you can execute so that it will collect the new statistics about the table. So you can literally copy and execute this statement. Doesn't make any difference. So that's the beauty about this one. Now it will also give you a little explanation, like the optimizer requires up-to-date statistics for the table in order to select a good execution plan. This is where is like the goal. Oracle SQL Tuning Advisor will give you recommendations, but it is up to you whether you want to take it or not. Now, the most important thing, guys, most of the times, the recommendations will be wrong. I can prove this in real time also, and I have seen it 100 times that the like the recommendations are wrong. And I'll give you one quick example before we wind up the session, and that will summarize why some recommendations are wrong. So you have column 1, you have column 2, you have column 3, and you have column 7. All right. Now there is a query 1. Query 1 is selecting column 1 to, I think we should, give me a minute guys, I think we should write all the columns. That will be good. Column 4, column 5, column 6, and column 7. All right, so we have Q1 that is querying the columns column 2, column 4, and column 5. We have query 2 that is querying column 1, and then that's querying column 3, that's querying column 5, I'm including the column 5, and that is also querying the column 7. The problem is the tuning advisor will give you advice based on the columns you have selected in that particular query. All right, so optimizer might say that, hey, why don't you create an index on column 4 based on this query. Now if you have another query on the table that is querying the different columns, optimizer say, hey, create an index on column 7. So these kind of recommendations, these are good to know, but you need to also see whether if you create an index on column 4, what impact it will have on the other queries, query 3, query 4, query 5 that is running inside the database. Or if you create an index on column 7, what impact will it have on the other queries, right? So not all the recommendations are good, guys. Don't always take the recommendation and start creating the indexes, because if you do that, the SQL Tuning Advisor will one day tell you to create so many indexes that your database table has 7 columns, but the same table has 20 indexes. And if you run the tuning advisor again, it will still give you another advice of creating a new index. So don't fall into the trap of the SQL Tuning Advisor. The goal is you should know how to run the Tuning Advisor. The goal is you need to look at the recommendations in the SQL Tuning Advisor. And then the goal is you as a DB analyze whether that recommendation applies to the SQL or not. Don't blindly apply all the recommendations. It's an automated tool. It doesn't know the impact on the other queries. It only knows that if you create this index, it will impact Q1, this query. If you create index on column 7, it knows that it will impact query 2. But Tuning Advisor does not know how the change or creating a new index might create a problem to the other queries. All right, guys, I'm sorry we stuffed in a lot of topics today, but any questions? Guys, I would like to know from the experienced DBAs, what was your SQL tuning experience till now? Did you find some recommendations that helped you, or did you find some recommendations that were all waste? Yes, Suryakant, you have something?
Yes, since Arun, actually most of the time we generate ADDM, SQL tuning, and all this. We see a lot of recommendation, but we never dare to do the changes according to recommendations.
Okay, so do you change your database based on the recommendations, or you don't change the database based on the recommendation?
No.
Okay.
Arun. Most of the time, no.
I know. How about you, Simon? You have some experience with the.
Yes, Arun. Actually, I saw that what you are doing right now. My lead, we have a 10 terabyte database. We moved to the Exadata. And during that time, he did a lot of tuning advising recommendation he done.
Okay. Did it improve? Did it improve the database performance or not?
Yeah, it did. Actually, he worked with the developers. And I see that he was sharing the screen and working with them, and it was work.
Okay, right. Guys, this tuning, as I mentioned earlier, it is not the DBS job. There are a lot of teams involved and a lot of, can you see, external and internal factors involved. So what we have discussed is just one little part of the SQL tuning. That is also how to run the SQL Tuning Advisor and how to read the execution plan. But there is more to do it. You might have to deal with the storage team. You might have to deal with the network team. And guys, I can't tell you how many times network is the biggest problem than the database. And I have seen it most of the times. And now working with the cloud, I see network being the primary reason for the performance issues than any other stuff inside the database.
Arun?
Yes.
Yes, ADDM, because we use most of the time ADDM, AWR, and sometimes SHM. So how different is SQL Tuning Advisor from the ADDM? Because I see there also a lot of recommendation and all.
I mean, at the core level, guys, you can link all the all the reports to one another. All right. So you can always get the same problem. Same recommendations in the ADDM also, but there is some inclination. Like for example. The ADDM is more inclined towards the database level recommendations. Can you change a parameter? Can you shift the parameter? Can you increase the instance memory and all? That is a little bit inclined towards the database level modifications. The SQL Tuning Advisor is inclined towards one particular SQL, like we have given or submitted one SQL ID, right? The AWR is overall the system, everything at a particular snapshot the AWR will store the details about everything, like which is the costliest SQL, what buffers, what is the memory size, what was happening inside the database. So technically, rather than running the SQL Tuning Advisor, you can get into AWR report, find the the costliest SQL, pick up the SQL ID, and then run the Tuning Advisor. So as I say, all these reports are interlinked, but then they have some inclination toward one part. Like as ASH report, it is for active session history. That means somebody who is connected inside the database and doing something, but technically you are generating an AWR for an active session. I mean, that's a good way to put it. So all these reports are one another linked in, you linked in, and then they give data a little bit inclined to one source. I don't know if I confused you, sorry.
Yeah, Arun, that's thanks. Yeah, that answers my question.